certain insights with you all. Don't take it as a a kind of a teaching or a kind of a deliberation. It's just a sharing or exchange of thoughts and views. And the area that I actually focused yesterday is a very very, you can say, small part of the entire qualitative research process, since we did not have the qualitative research design as such in the preliminary classes. I did not find in the work schedule also. So directly coming on to the qualitative data analysis, it's just taking a leap from almost from nowhere. Anyway, since you have the primary or preliminary understanding about the research design, you have gone through the research design probably in quantitative context, and in qualitative context, yes, the methods and the methodologies are a little different, the sampling techniques are different, the nature of the data is different. So based on all those differences, the nature of the qualitative data analysis is also different. But the approach basically differs in the sense that what exactly your objective is, because we cannot force on to adopting certain methods. If I am supposed to take a quantitative approach, that has to be logical, that has to be backed up by a lot of rationality. The data that I shall be accessing, or the data that I shall be collecting or gathering for my research, that should support the quantitative research process. So I, as a researcher, as a scholar, you should have a very clear-cut idea in your mind that what specific method you should follow, or one researcher should follow. Again, it comes from what kind of research activity you want to get yourself involved into. If you want to pursue a very deductive kind of a research, which only confirms or reinforces the existing theoretical framework, and try to expand the theoretical framework in terms of variables and dimensions and additional factor, and try to contextualize those dimensions, variables, and additional factors, nothing more than that. But if you are focusing on a broader aspect, that means you want to contribute by building up your own theory, your approach will be certainly different. Now, deductive versus inductive again determines what kind of approach or method you should follow, whether it should be quantitative, because quantitative method is much more aligned with the deductive kind of research, and qualitative methods or qualitative research work is much more aligned with the inductive kind of method. So there lies the actual approach wise differences. Then you have a number of other theoretical groundings or the methodologies based on which this qualitative data analysis will be is taken up. Anyway, in our last session, we focused on the thematic analysis, and I told you that three specific analysis we will be dealing with. The first one was thematic analysis. The second one was probably I was talking about the relational analysis or relationship analysis, and the third one is the comparison, multi-group comparison that we have in quantitative data analysis also, like independent sample t-test, or if you want to examine differences between more than two groups, you often use the one-way ANOVA for mean comparisons, or you can go for multivariate comparisons, multivariate linear models for comparing between two or more groups. So we have all those quantitative aspects on one hand, and the same thing can be done on a qualitative grounding also. So let us take up from where we left yesterday. Probably we were into the network analysis. And let me open up, first of all, let me share my screen. So we were actually using one QDAS yesterday, that is the qualitative data analysis software called Atlas TI. And yesterday we developed one project which was named as demo underscore AKDG. So let me open up this project. Now, in this project, we had 10 documents. Probably you can recall that out of these 10 documents, we had 3 image documents, 2 video documents, and 5 PDF documents were there. So 5 text documents. And we developed actually 12 codes. And out of those 12 codes, we developed 5 code groups, and we have also developed 7 document groups. Okay. Now, interestingly, we developed one particular memo which was having groundedness of 1 and density of 0. Yesterday we talked about the concept of groundedness and density, particularly with reference to code. And when we talk about groundedness, it actually refers to a code, a specific code with how many quotations that code is attached with. And probably you can also recall that quotation is basically that part of the segment of a data which the researcher feels that it is quite important input as far as the data analysis is concerned. So a particular code may be attached or linked with multiple number of quotations. So the number of quotations the code is linked with is a measure of its groundedness. And the link between 2 codes measures its density. So if a particular code is linked with one code, so the density is 1. If it is linked with multiple number of codes, it depends on how many codes it is being linked with. That will determine the value of its density. So these were the things that we clarified yesterday. So let us straight away move into the network. Now, you see, during our last presentation, I told you that at the fag end of the thematic analysis, we tend to develop the theme or the pattern based on the groupings of the code. So when we are creating the code groups, here we have created 5 code groups. Actually, they are the 5 emerging patterns out of the pool of data that we are accessing or the scholar is accessing. So these are basically the themes that have emerged from the analysis. So we have analyzed the entire data because we hypothetically considered each and every data as a qualitative research data, although these are not actually the qualitative data, but we assume or we just hypothesize that these are the qualitative research data. Probably these are case studies or focus group interviews or key informant interviews or scheduled interviews, etc. And we codified the important part of these data or the segments or the quotations, and then we try to merge the codes to develop the super codes or the code groups, which are basically representative of the emerging pattern from these data. So we actually identify 5 patterns, like perceived risk of traveling, that is pattern number 1. Recovery, that is pattern number 2. Resilience and recovery, pattern number 3. Responsible tourism, pattern number 4. And user generated content in formulating recovery strategies, that pattern number 5. So these 5 patterns, which are almost uniformly spreaded or somehow spreaded across the data, we are supposed to identify how they are interlinked with each other. So you can say in the network, we try to identify the map and try to this is almost the penultimate process of the data analysis, of qualitative data analysis. Once you identify the map or once you identify the network, then you are in a position to write down the report. So these are the patterns that have evolved. These are the themes that have evolved from the data analysis, and this is how the links are, and the themes or the patterns are interconnected with each other. Now you can conclude on the basis of these patterns and the linked or the networks. Okay. So yesterday we also discussed that the network can be of two types. The first type of the network is the automated network. The automated network is actually determined. It's automatic process or auto networking process taken up by the software itself or the application itself, based on the backend algorithm and depending on the similarity and the proximity between the codes. Okay, so that is automated process done by the software or the application itself. Now, there can be another kind of networking, which is called a semantic networking or semantic linkage, which can be taken up by the researcher himself or herself. And this basically gives the input of from the researcher's point of view. If the researcher feels that these quotations or these codes or these codes and quotations or these code groups and document groups are to be linked with each other or are some way interconnected with each other, and each of the interconnection can be named, can be given a specific nomenclature by the machine, so that becomes a part of the semantic linkage. And often it has been seen that a researcher ends up with a hybrid kind of network where a part of the network is produced out of the automated process and the part of the network is researcher's own semantic inputs, what the researcher felt that the codes and the documents etc are interconnected with each other. Okay, so let us take the automated network first. Yesterday we saw a brief glimpse about the automated network process. Today we will focus on the automated network plus the semantic network, both of them, and we will also try to amalgamate both of these, the automated networking as well as the semantic linkages. So let us start. So from the network command comes, the network command comes from this particular tab called new entities. So if you click it, you will have the option of a new network. You click on the network and let us put a name on this network, say network 1. Okay, this name has been used yesterday. So network 2. So free floating window will surface. This is network 2. At the top you can find that the network 2 label has been has appeared. So this is the canvas where you can drag and drop anything. Okay, so let us just drag the codes. Say, for example, our initial research objective or the focal research objective was to find out how the recovery will start, particularly for the tourism sector during this pandemic time. So our focal variable was the recovery strategies. So let us bring it over here. So you can just drag and drop. You can select the code and you can drag and drop it here. So the recovery strategy has appeared on this network canvas. Now what we can do is we can click it and we can right click it and we can add neighbors. So let us first incorporate all the common which is associated with this particular code. So immediately you will find all the common quotations will rush in. So if I click here, you will find all these common quotations as well as some of the codes that are attached to it. So if you see this, probably it is a bit difficult for us to visualize in a proper way. So what you can do is you have two options. One is the option of a layout and second one is the option of a routing. So you can select the layout option and you can select any one of these options to make your network visibility or network to be visualized in a proper way. So you can click the orthogonal tree, which is a proper way to visualize this network. And now you can see that this recovery strategy is a part of risk of traveling, and it is also contradicting the false information or fake news being shared over the social media. So it also brings in another code which is called the New Normal Tourism Initiative, which is connected through a quotation. Okay, so this particular quotation is a part of both these codes, this New Normal Tourism Initiative as well as the recovery strategy. So let us see whether we can bring in some more common things. So if we randomly select any quotation and try to find out, yes, we have some more linkages. So if we again organize it organically, we can find some more things. Now, if I just put uh, again or select again one of the quotations, and then again try to bring certain other common things, you can find some certain additional linkages. Uh, so in this way, we have also brought in a document group over here also. So in this way, you can actually build up the network, and this network is being built up on the basis of an automated process. Okay, the automated process based on the code similarity and the code proximity, all the codes that we have developed. Okay, so let us just reduce it, and let us just close it. So you have understood how the automated process of a networking or the mapping can be done. Now let us have another network. Say this will be network 3, and here we will try to actually use our semantics. Okay, so our own inputs, so to say. Now let us see the quotations. Okay, so if you just click on to these small triangles beside all these things, all these documents, you will find all the quotations. Okay, and you have the codes over here also. These are all the codes that you are having. Fine. So let us bring one of the quotations. This I am doing it pretty randomly. So in a proper research setup, you know which are the codes you are bringing in and how these codes are related to each other. So let me just randomly bring one quotation over here. And this is a video quotation. As you can see from the icon, this is a video quotation. So if I can find out the preview, if in a video format, probably the PDF is it's not available. But if I can select one image, you see the preview is available. So somehow, say I have brought in two quotations, one in the form of a video quotation and one in the form of an image quotation. And you know what are these quotations, because you know the related codes also. Okay, so if I add neighbor and all the codes associated with it, and then I go for an orthogonal tree over here, you see this particular image, this particular image section, this is a part of the image that was supposed to be our data. This was coded with the help of three codes. One is responsible traveling, the second one is sustainable tourism, and the third one is declining tourism economy. Okay, now let us see what were the codes associated with this particular video clip or the video segment. So the codes, you see, let me again justify the layout. So we have the New Normal Tourism Initiative and the recovery strategy. Fine. Now we were talking about fine. So you can just operate it from here also, the coded segment. Anyway, uh, I have dragged two specific quotations for a semantic linkage. One is a video quotation, and one is a image quotation, and I have dragged in all the codes which were associated with it. So the image quotation has 3 codes associated with it, and this video quotation, it had 2 codes associated with it. And one of the basic or the focal codes which is associated with this particular video quotation is the recovery strategy. So as a researcher, now I can construct a semantic linkage, because I feel that the sustainable tourism will be one very important part of this recovery strategy. Okay, one very important component of this recovery strategy, because sustainability, it brings lesser intervention with the biodiversity. It brings lesser intervention of the human beings with the ecological balance. So in a post-COVID scenario, probably it is more required. Two things which will be emerging in terms of traveling will be responsible traveling, and the second one is the concept of tourism itself. Over the years we have spoken about sustainable tourism, but it will be one of the pivotal issues in the recovering of the tourism. So what I can do is I can click this orange small dot, and I can actually connect it with this. Okay, and I can say is associated with, okay, with recovery strategy. So sustainable tourism is associated with recovery strategy. Similarly, this particular thing, which is basically the responsible traveling, I can draw from here to here, and I can also say it is associated with the recovery strategy. Now, if I rearrange my entire network, so over here it's an amalgamation of 2 different kinds of network. One which has been automatically produced by the software on the basis of the similarity and the proximity of the codes, and one which the researcher feels that it is very pertinent that these 2 elements should be a part of the network also. One is basically the pivotal area or the focal area is the recovery strategy, and sustainable tourism is a part of that recovery strategy, and responsible traveling should be a part of that also. So these 2 codes are associated with our focal code. So these 2 linkages are semantic linkages. So in the same way, the researchers can bring in much more elements in the form of quotation, in the form of codes, in the form of even code groups. And if the researcher feels that they are a part of a broader linkage, in addition to the automated linkage that has been churned out by the software, they can easily integrate to those 2 network types and can produce something more robust and more, you can say, explanatory in nature. So this is all about the thematic analysis. So we have understood how to code, how to create the patterns on the basis of grouping of the code, how to classify the document, how to you can say cluster the documents, and then how to create the network or the concept maps, or the you can say the linkages between the nodes, between the codes and the quotations, both in an automatic way or an automated way, or manually it can be done also. So the next thing that I told you, 2 things actually. One is the relational analysis, which brings the code co-occurrence into force, whether the codes are occurring simultaneously, what is the frequency of that code co-occurrence, so that we can interpret which are the major segments of the data which are having frequent co-occurrence. So if I am generating 10 interviews, 10 focus group interviews, or 10 case studies, and if I find out that certain segments are very frequently occurring, or certain answers are almost common out of those 10 interviews, I can actually frame my conclusion on the basis of those answers, or you can say unanimity of those answers. So I need to find out a very logical explanation of these co-occurrences, and at the same time I can go for a comparison between, say, two groups. In quantitative data analysis, as I have told you, we can measure between two groups. We can have measure between more than two groups. We can use t-test, we can use ANOVA to check whether the two groups differ from each other. So in qualitative context also, this software has given us that liberty, so that we can go for that kind of a comparison. So what we will do, we will click this particular analyze button, or the analyze tab. And yesterday you have seen that three elements are pretty important. One is the code co-occurrence table, which we will be using for relational analysis. Code document table, which we will be using for the comparison part, or the comparative analysis. And yesterday we had a look into the intercoder mode also, and I have explained why this intercoder mode is useful. Anyway, let us go and see this code co-occurrence table. Fine. Now there you will find that since it is a table, it will have a certain distribution across the rows, and will have certain distribution across the columns. Actually, it is an exact replica of a bivariate correlation which takes place on the quantitative platform. So what we will do, we will put all the variables in the row by clicking over here. See all the codes actually in the row. And since this is a kind of a correlation, we will place all the variables in the column also. And then we will try to find out the kind of relationship or co-occurrence that actually takes place. So as I just click on and check these boxes, and the codes are dragged into the columns and row, probably you can see the table is under construction, and the table has a color code also. Okay, so here the table has been formed. If there are certain blank columns or blank rows, and you need to delete them for proper visibility of the entire column, what you can do is you can use this compress tab. Okay, so if you are clicking this compress tab, if there are any empty columns or rows, it will be automatically deleted. Okay, now let us see this. So over here, if I just take one particular code into consideration, say recovery strategy. Recovery strategy is very well connected to the heritage and culture tourism as a recovery option. Yesterday we talked about that, and within the bracket you will find that there is a coefficient which is called the C coefficient. It is almost analogous to, or almost synonymous to, what we used to have in bivariate correlation in the form of Spearman's rho, or a Pearson correlation R, correlation coefficient. So this is called a C coefficient, and it is quite high, 0.50. So recovery strategy is having a very strong relationship with the heritage and culture tourism as a recovery initiative. So when you are analyzing the qualitative data and when you are writing the report, you just keep this table handy, and you can reproduce this table also, because you can export it to Excel. So if I just click it, you can easily export this table in Excel format. Fine. And then you can actually produce it along with your journal paper, or you can insert in your thesis also. So over here, you can see all these code co-occurrences you can understand. So responsible traveling is having a very good relationship with sustainable tourism. Okay, so probably you can recall in the network or the linkage part, we have said that recovery strategy will have two very important initiative or two very important part or component. One is the sustainable tourism issue, the practice of sustainable tourism, and the responsible travel behavior. So responsible travel behavior is sharing a very good relationship with sustainable tourism. So the C coefficient is 0.67. So by virtue of these co-occurrence, we can say that sustainable tourism, if this practice has to take place or has to materialize, most of the respondents or most of the interviewees have provided their opinion that responsible travel behavior should be one of the prerequisites to ensure sustainability in tourism. Or you can say, if I speak in terms of quantitative data analysis, responsible travel behavior is one of the antecedent of sustainability in tourism. Now, if I ask a quantitative researcher to assess the relationship between responsible travel behavior and sustainability of tourism, and if I ask them to develop certain construct or scale to collect data, continuous data for responsible travel behavior and sustainable tourism, and then conduct a regression or a correlation analysis, probably they will come out with the same kind of result. But here, since we are dealing with qualitative data, we are falling back on the responses that was provided to us either by the interviewee or the focus group, or our observations or the case study while interacting with a particular group or a particular hamlet, a particular village, a particular community in a particular zone, etc. So the code co-occurrence table is basically a table that gives us an idea about the relationship between different codes on the basis of their co-occurrences. And the frequency of co-occurrence determines how significant these codes are in relation to the entire data being taken for analysis. Okay, so this is all about the code co-occurrence and the relational analysis, which you can easily incorporate in your data analysis report. You can just export this particular table in Excel format, and then you can actually, once you are importing it into the Excel format, and it becomes a numerical data almost, then you can have other analysis also as deemed fit. Okay, so this is all about the code co-occurrences, how many codes are co-occurring with each other. And the next thing that we are supposed to see is the comparison. Okay, so let me just close this. So this code co-occurrence table in Atlas TI is basically establishing the relationship between the codes. That means in other way, so just let me get back over here, and let me just make certain selective codes so that okay. Now you see, if I click these cells, at the bottom you will find the quotations. Okay, the quotations which are actually interrelated or correlated with each other. So the moment you are getting the quotations, that means the part of the data, it will be easier for you to write the analysis report. So if I click over here, you will find this one. If I click over here, you will find this one. If I click over here, you will find two quotations. If I click over here, you will find this quotation. Okay, so that is one of the area which is very helpful for the researchers to write down their analysis report. The next thing is the comparison part. comparison between two groups or multiple number of groups, as is done in case of quantitative data analysis also. So you need to have the code document table. So if I click this code document table, you will find that it brings over here. Again, since it will be a matrix, it will be a very complex kind of a matrix, because it will allow us to compare between, say over here, all these data inputs. So we have yesterday we have randomly, you can say, or very hypothetically, we have categorized them, or we have grouped them into female response and male responses, and zone 1 and zone 2. And these are the code groups, or these are the themes. So what we will be comparing, we will be comparing these themes or these patterns which were created by grouping these codes. Okay, so these codes were grouped to create this pattern or theme. Now it is our turn to compare the pattern or theme across the data groups. Okay, so I want to find out that whether there is a difference in these thematic patterns across zone 1 and zone 2. So under this particular situation, we are presuming or we are hypothesizing that the researcher has done or conducted his or her research work in two specific zones, zone 1 and zone 2, and data were collected from both zone 1 and zone 2 with the help of same methods, with the help of same procedure. And now the researcher is very much interested to compare that whether there is any significant difference between the themes or the patterns which were generated from the codes across these two zones. Okay, so let us select zone 1 and zone 2. So the moment we have selected zone 1 and zone 2, it featured in the column position, and we will be comparing this, the themes or the emerged patterns or the code groups. So let us select all these. Fine. Now in zone 1, there are 4 actually data input from zone 1 with 2 quotations, and from zone 2 there were 6 data inputs with 5 quotations. Okay, so if I just expand this table. Now, with regard to perceived risk of traveling, we did not get anything from zone 1, but we got a response from zone 2. With regard to recovery, we got response from both zone 1 and zone 2, but there is a difference. Okay, with regard to resilience and recovery, we got response from zone 1 and zone 2, but there is a good difference between these two. Responsible tourism, as one of the recovery strategies, we got a response from zone 1 and zone 2. Unfortunately, there is a difference in response also. So user generated content in formulating recovery strategy, we did not get any response from zone 1, but we got response from zone 2. Now you see, if I see the total frequency over here, it's 5, and the total frequency over here is 16. Fine. So it will be very difficult for us to compare. Even if we go back for our independent sample t-test, if the sample size is different, then probably it will be very unethical and almost impossible to compare on equal terms. So what we can do over here, even this qualitative data analysis platform has given you the option to normalize these data so that it can be brought to a common platform so that they can be comparable. As of now, with this kind of assorted frequency distribution, it becomes very difficult for us to actually compare. So we need to normalize this particular distribution. So what you need to do is, you see, you come back to the upper navigational panel. Over here, you will find one particular tab called normalize. Okay, you can see this. So you simply check this box. Now you see this entire data distribution has been normalized. Okay, now you can compare. So recovery, it's 6.4 versus 4. Responsible tourism 6.4 versus 4. Resilience and recovery, we can say resilience and recovery, which are supposed to be correlated with each other. Most of, as per the version of most of the interviewees, so there is a minimal difference between this, so we can take it as a homogeneous response against our question. But we can actually assess where the substantial difference lies between this and this. Okay, 6.4 versus 4. And now if we can just click this, we can have all those quotations where actually these things lies. Okay, so if I click this and this, or if I go here and here, so you can access, you can have access to all those quotations from where this particular interaction figures are coming. Okay, so let us just use another thing. Let me just close this and let me reopen. Okay, so we had zone 1 and zone 2. Again, this is very hypothetical, so you just understand the technicality behind that. Now yesterday we were pointing out to the fact that if a particular researcher is very much interested about a demographical comparison, by using gender, say for example, you can use other things also, like occupation, like the age range, or the disposable income, or even if you are interested about ethnography, you can go deep inside the caste and culture, and the kind of religion, comparison between religions. So over here we have again hypothesized this. Over here we have female respondents and male respondents, although they are actually not the female and male. This is only for explanation. So we are plotting them in the column area. Now we want to make a comparison between the female and the male response, and we want to find out that whether there is a gender-wise difference between these code groups, or the pattern, or the theme that we have constructed from the codes, whether there is a difference between the male response and the female response. Okay, so again, there is a issue of frequency anomaly. So let us again normalize this. Now you check. So the male response and female response with regard to, say, this one, recovery. So male response is 2.5, female response is 5, so it's double. So we need to recheck this. This can be considered as a potential difference between the male response and the female response with regard to recovery, and with regard to responsible tourism also there is a difference. With response to perceived risk of traveling, there is a difference, but again the difference is not that staggering. Difference between resilience and recovery. So there are differences which requires further analysis. And if a researcher wants to conduct a quantitative analysis about these two demographic group across these 4 identified themes, he or she can do so, and then can compare it with the qualitative result. Otherwise, if you want to stick with your qualitative data analysis, this gives you enough to write your conclusion, and this gives you enough logical support to write your conclusion in a very consolidated manner, because this helps you to visualize where exactly the difference is. Otherwise, previously what we used to do, we used to go through the data manually. We used to go through all the interview schedules manually, and then try to find out all those differences. And at the end of the entire analysis, it becomes very difficult for us to summarize all those differences point wise. Okay, because we are dealing with only 10 data inputs, although these are not actual data, but we are dealing with only 10 data inputs. So in a real life scenario, real research scenario, there can be as many as 100 to 150 data inputs with almost 300 to 400 codes. There can be a number of code groups, there can be a number of document groups. So this particular matrix can be much more complicated, much more insightful, and it can provide you with much, you can say results at the minute details, so that you can compare between groups. Okay, so this is about the comparison analysis, and from, if you just click here, you will get all those quotations from where this comparison have been done, and you can actually refer back to the original data segment, that means the quotations, and can write down the report of your analysis supported by this particular matrix, comparison matrix. So you are also having the option to export this as well in Excel format, so that you can further proceed it with any kind of. I have seen that some of the people have done. They have taken it to the SPSS, platform also for certain further analysis. Fine. So we have used Atlas TI to take up this thematic analysis and the relational analysis and the the comparison between the code groups or the patterns or the themes that have developed. Okay, so let me just end this. Fine. So it brings us to the end of this demonstration with Atlas TI. And yesterday I told you that apart from this thematic analysis, one particular analysis which has become very popular these days, particularly amongst the qualitative researcher, and it has become also very popular amongst the quantitative researcher also, because the quantitative version of this particular analysis is also present, which is called the content analysis. Okay, so it can be both qualitative content analysis as well as quantitative content analysis, and we will try to find out what exactly is the difference between the two. So what I will do, you like yesterday, I will just take you through a very quick slide presentation about the content analysis, and then we will use a QDA minor, that is another that is another qualitative data analysis tool. But before that, I just want to show you one thing. Like yesterday I was referring to, that if you want to use QDA minor, you can use the QDA minor Lite. So you just go to so this is the sorry, this is the max QDA. So this is the Provalis research page, from where either you can go for QDA minor, the trial version, or you can download the light version. Like the light version, it has certain, you can say restrictions, certain limitations in terms of data analysis, but still it works nice for certain preliminary qualitative data analysis. So let us just take a very quick look into the content analysis. So then we will just move on to the QDA minor to see certain hands-on with regard to qualitative data analysis, particularly the content analysis. So very quick look into the content of the slide. So what is content analysis? I think every one of you know what is actually content analysis. Some researchers have defined the qualitative content analysis as a research method for the subjectivist interpretation of text and data. So this particular area is very important. Subjectivist interpretation. So it is a very qualitative take on text and data through systematic classification process of coding and identifying themes or patterns. We did exactly the same thing when we took this thematic analysis. That means development of patterns or identification of themes. Some researchers have said that qualitative content analysis is an approach of empirical, methodological, controlled analysis of texts within their context of communication. Now, this part is very important, the context of communication. Okay, so we cannot identify any term, any keyword, any stop word, any kind of expression, any kind of phrase. We cannot just drag arbitrarily or randomly out of the context, and then we can assign certain codes and meaning to it. So it has to be in context of the communication. So if you are receiving verbal or audio communication or audio visual communication or textual communication, if you are generating a response through texts, all all your coding, identification of the keywords, etc., should be in context of the communication, following content analytic rules and step-by-step model. So we have also this particular take about the qualitative content analysis. It's explored the meanings underlying physical messages and is inductive. Okay, grounding the examination of topics and themes as well as inferences drawn from them in data. Again, inductive. So more often than not, when we deal with qualitative data analysis, either the subjectivistic interpretation or this kind of inductive grounding, etc., these terminologies, they resurface. Okay, so somehow giving us us a certain idea about the premise of the qualitative data analysis, which is much more subjective, which is suitable for inductive research. Now, the characteristics of the content analysis, the first thing that comes in our mind is the flexibility of using both the inductive and the deductive approaches in combination with each other. So if we are using an inductive approach, which is appropriate with prior knowledge regarding the phenomena under investigation, is limited or fragmented. So in case of an inductive approach, when we are supposed to take an inductive approach, when the knowledge with regard to a certain phenomena, with regard to certain issue is very scarce. That means there is not enough literature support, not a very robust theoretical framework that do exist. So sorry, in inductive approach, the codes, the categories or themes are directly drawn from the data. So you do not have a benchmark or reference or any kind of epistemological basis where you can fall back and say you can actually compare and cross check. Okay, so that's the inductive approach. You are basically free to explore the new things. Whereas in case of a deductive approach, it starts with certain preconceived codes or categories which are actually derived from the already existing theory or the theoretical framework or from the previous researches or from the literature that already exists. So the deductive approach is appropriate when the objective of the study is to test the existing theory or retest the existing data in a new context. So you are just dragging or extending the existing theory, and you are trying to contextualize in different areas or as per different issues, as per different environmental elements. Okay. And then we have two very important thing in content analysis. One is called the latent content meaning, and one is the manifested content meaning. Now, in case of a quantitative approach, quantitative content analysis, we actually limit ourselves to the surface analysis or manifested content analysis. Now, manifested content analysis basically deals with the numerical data or the very tangible element that are visible, that are visible at the surface. That means if we are counting word, say word frequencies, how many time a word is repeating in a particular data, in a set of data. Say I have collected 10 focus group interviews, or I have collected 10 case studies, I have collected 10 key informant interviews, etc. So I have a 30 data set, and a particular word is repeated, say 100 times in those 30 data. Okay, then another word is repeated almost 89 times in those 30 data sets. Another word is repeated 75 times on these data sets. So when we are dealing with these numerical figures or these superficial figures, that how many time a data is being repeated, and how many what is the frequency of this repetition, etc., those are the manifested content analysis. Yes, the qualitative data analysis software also help us in identifying the word count. It can help us in determine the frequency of these words. It can also help us in visualizing the existence of this word in the data set by creating a word cloud, which is a visual representation of a word count and frequency. But these are at the manifested or at the superficial or the surface level, because it will not give you any idea about the context or the back end linkages of the context against which these words were spoken. Even the phrases which are repeated over a specific data set, it will not help you to understand the hidden meaning, or the layered meaning, or the intangible meaning, or the latent content meaning. So manifested content analysis is much more numerical, much more tangible, much more visible at the surface level. But when we talk about latent content analysis or actually qualitative content analysis, we the researcher tend to go down at the very micro level and try to identify that when the words are spoken, when certain phrases are being used, in what context they were used. So what is the underlying meaning of these words and phrases in the context of the entire data set, or in the context of the text, or in the context of the video, or in the context of the graphical image, or in the context of the interview. Okay, so that becomes very important. So can there be a mix of both? Yes, there can be a mix of both, because mixed method research has emerged a big way. We call it, method triangulation, whereby the qualitative, quantitative, and a quasi-qualitative, quasi-quantitative method, or hybridization of qualitative and quantitative method, it is taking place. And there are very good papers nowadays you will find which are using both qualitative as well as quantitative uh, you know uh, methods in the same paper. Okay, and particularly you will find when certain, I have seen this in a couple of papers, wherever there is a issue of analyzing a behavioral pattern, either a consumer behavioral pattern or a social behavioral pattern, or identifying a social behavioral norm, any kind of subjective norm with perceived controls, etc. Wherever there is a behavioral issue which deals with a lot of psychological involvement, there the initial research starts with the qualitative process to identify the variables which are actually controlling or impacting certain behavioral pattern. Then, to confirm whether those identified variables at the qualitative level, whether they are really whether they can be really accepted as a variable for a constructed scale, then the quantitative research takes place, and then the scale item generation and all those, principal component analysis or factor analysis, confirmatory factor analysis, etc., takes place. But to start with, identification of those factors, a number of researchers are now, they are taking help of the qualitative research process. So in a content analysis, 5 major types of texts are used, and it is almost similar to that of the thematic analysis. So we have written texts, or the oral text, that means the audios. The iconic text, it basically represents all the graphical images, pictures, etc. Audio-visual, the videos, and the hypertext. Hypertext basically are the texts which are taken from the internet, like HTML files, or if you are gathering certain files directly from the social networking site or e-commerce site, etc. So these are the different kind of texts which are being used. Now, the major approaches to content analysis, there are 3 very distinct approaches to the content analysis. The first analysis, content analysis, the type is called the conventional approach. The conventional content analysis is generally used with a study design whose aim is to, describe a phenomena. Okay. Now, the type of design is actually appropriate when there is lack of theory or lack of previous, research. So in a conventional content analysis, you are not attached to any preconceived notion. So all the codifications and categories and the group formation, the clustering, it directly comes out of the data. Okay, so in one way it is advantageous. That means it reduces the chance of over alignment towards an existing theory, so that you do not get very much bias to that theory and end up with contributing absolutely nothing, but reconfirm or reinforce the theory in itself. So your contribution basically becomes zero. But there is a disadvantage. The disadvantage is that since there is no reference or there is no epistemological grounding, that means no theoretical support is there, one of the disadvantages is the researchers tend to become very much focused on the words, very much focused on the terminologies, very much focused on the phrases. And the moment they start extracting the words and phrases and the key concepts, any attitudinal phrases from the responses, they become very much focused on the surface, as we have already discussed, the manifested content analysis kind of a thing. So they tend to get detached from the context, and that is undesirable. Okay, so there is a chance that the researcher, if they are carried over by the fact that they are absolutely free to explore the new phenomena, since there is no existing theory, no existing research work. So whatever they will be contributing is a kind of a new one to the system, to the knowledge pool. They often end up with conducting content analysis at the superficial level. So word count, word frequency, the word correlation, etc., that becomes more important for them, rather than actually finding out in what context those words were used, in what context those phrases were used, and what is the underlying meaning or the hidden meaning. So contextualization may be a big failure. Whereas in a directed approach, what happens? In a directed approach, you are having an existing theory. Okay, you are having an existing theoretical background. So it is much more epistemological in nature. You have the support of a theoretical framework. Okay, and this helps you in preparing a code book, certain preconceived categories, some certain predetermined or preset codes, which you can actually use to analyze your data. Okay, you can develop your own code set also, and then try to match with the preset codes that you have developed from the theoretical base. Okay, and this helps you in aligning the entire content analysis, both at the manifested level, that means the tangible level or the numerical level, whereby the word count and word frequencies, etc. But at the same time, it helps you understanding why these specific words or terms, or these responses or these keywords or these phrases were used. Okay, so some kind of semblance is there. In case of summative approach, what happens? A study using a summative approach to qualitative research, qualitative content analysis, is identifying and quantifying certain words or certain characters or certain, you can say, categories, uh, on a simple purpose of contextualizing them. So in a summative approach, you are not focusing on the manifested level of the content analysis at all. So you are trying to understand only why certain, terminologies, why certain phrases, why certain words that are being repeatedly used, and the researcher is much more interested to find out the context in which. So they are much more interested to find out the context similarity rather than the code similarity. Okay, so the theme development or the pattern development comes from the context network rather from the code network. So in a summative approach, we have what we can say, some kind of a deep learning compared to the directed approach and the conventional approach. Now, if I make a comparative analysis between these three approaches, the major coding differences among the three approaches to content analysis. So in the conventional content analysis, the study starts with an observation. So what you have a data set. What you do not have substantial theoretical backup. You do not have substantial epistemological grounding. Okay, so the timing of definition codes or keywords, the codes are defined during the data analysis. Okay, so this is very important. Codes are defined during the data analysis. Why? Because since you do not have any theoretical background, you cannot have any preconceived or predetermined code sets. So you do not have a code book, ready-made code book. You have to prepare your own code book. Okay, the source of codes or keywords, the codes are derived from the data itself. Now, if I compare this with the directed content analysis, the study, it starts with a theory. So here we have an epistemological, support. We have a theory grounded on which we are starting our research. So timing of defining the codes or keywords, the codes are defined before and during the data analysis. So before the data analysis, from where you are generating code, you are generating code from the literature. So you are preparing your own code book. And during the data analysis, that's data driven code that you are preparing. So you have option of both preset to generate a preset code book and a data driven code book. The source of codes and keywords, the codes are derived from theory when you are developing a preset code book, or relevant research findings. That means whatever the data you are having. Summative content analysis, it basically starts with the keywords and then they go into the depth, the contextuality of those keywords. So the timing of defining the codes or keywords, the keywords are identified before and during the data analysis. So in case of summative content analysis also, you have a theoretical support. The source of keywords, the keywords are derived from interest of researchers or review of the literature. So this is a kind of a comparative analysis between the major coding differences which exist between the three approaches to the content analysis. So this is the general steps in content analysis. We start with a research question, then conceptualization of that research question, then sampling and unitizing, developing the code scheme. Now, the code scheme development is very prominent wherever there is extant literature support. So if we do not have substantial literature support or theoretical support, this code scheme development will be a bit problem. Then we go for the data collection, then coding, then the normal analytical process starts, coding, data analysis, findings, and conclusion. Okay. This is a step for conducting relational analysis, so nothing new in it. And yeah, this is important. Particularly focus group interview content analysis. For focus group interview, we already have two established kind of processes. The instruments that were developed to facilitate the content analysis in focus groups. One is a message measurement inventory developed by R.T. Smith in 1978, which is a very robust technique. It was used to assess one of the psychological events where the content development, content analysis was carried out with the help of focus group. You can get this paper in the internet if you search. This is a part of a book, and this is a part of a chapter also, which was published in the journal. And then we have another, scale, which is called the Gottschalk-Glaser content analysis scale, which was developed in 1969. Now, both these scales are widely referred to by the researcher these days. Okay, but we go one step further to find out something more contemporary, more assertive in nature, whereby the researchers are using it. So we stay with this focus group, and we try to find out what Janis in 1965, Janis identified three distinct type of content analysis based on the purpose of investigation, and which was later supported by Krippendorf in 2004, M. Stone in 2014, and Grisham in 2016. So you can easily understand that these three distinct type of content analysis is very contemporary. So most of the researchers who are using content analysis, they are falling back to one of these processes. The first one is called a pragmatical content analysis. This process helps in classifying codes according to their probable cause and effects. Now, the major emphasis is why something is said. Okay, so if you are interviewing someone in the form of an FGI, or in the form of a scheduled interview, or in the form of an in-depth interview, then why something is said. So the transcription becomes very important. You have to be very thorough with the transcript. So why something is said. So it is almost like a cause and effect kind of a thing. The second one is semantical content analysis. This involves classifying codes according to their meanings, and it can be further classified into three areas. One is called the designation analysis, frequency with which certain objects are mentioned in the interviews or in the case studies or in the key informant interviews. Attribution analysis, frequency with which certain characterizations and descriptors are used. And then assertions analysis, frequency with which certain objects are characterized in a certain way. So when you are collecting data with the help of certain case study method, or focus group interview method, or observation method, or scheduled interview method, or in-depth interview method, or key informant interview method, we need to identify these frequencies. Frequency with which certain objects are mentioned in the interview process, frequency with which certain characterizations and descriptors are used while giving the interviews and while narrating certain incidents, and frequency with which certain objects are characterized in a certain way. So if you are asking about certain issues or certain objects, how it is characterized, it becomes very important. And then we have the third analysis process, which is called the sign vehicle analysis, classifies content according to the psychophysical properties of codes. Okay. Now, there has been a debate, like for example, when you are taking certain interviews in the form of just noting down what is being said. Say you are taking interview of one person, and you are throwing a question, or you are probing a question to the interviewee, and the interview gives you answer, and the entire interview process is neither audio recorded, neither audio visually recorded. You are just noting down or jotting down whatever is being said. Now, there is a problem in this particular issue. The problem is, whatever you are noting, fine, you are noting whatever he is saying. The best thing is you are noting down exactly the same words that are coming out from the interviewee, but the non-verbal communications you are missing. So a smile, or a shrug of the shoulder, or a pause, or frowning the eyebrows, or a sense of irritation or agitation on part of the interviewee, you are missing out on certain non-verbal communication also. And these in qualitative data analysis, the posture analysis and the gesture analysis of the interviewee also, they count. Okay, if you want to get exactly the psychophysical property of the interviewee, it becomes very important that you have either you should have the audio visual recording of the interviews, if not at least the audio interviews. Okay, so these are the three different kind of content analysis which are still being used, and these three are very contemporary in nature. And this is all about the theoretical background of content analysis. Now, what we are supposed to do today, we will take a very quick look, because we cannot go on a very extensive kind of a session, but we will go into certain preliminary, you can say, idea about QDA minor. QDA minor is a very robust kind of qualitative data analysis software, and QDA minor has two, you can say, supportive companion. One is called a WordStat. WordStat basically is an integral part of QDA minor. And WordStat can be separately installed in your machine also. So without starting the QDA minor, if you want to go for content analysis only, you can actually do it with WordStat without opening QDA minor. The QDA minor will do the thematic analysis, the coding, etc. for you, and after conducting the coding analysis, etc., you can straight away from the QDA minor interface itself, you can proceed for the WordStat. Okay, so WordStat specifically has been provided by Provalis Research Corporation, particularly for the content analysis. And then we have another companion which is called the Simstat. Simstat is a statistical analysis companion which is provided along with the QDA minor. So if you are segregating the categorical variables, and if you want to have a further statistical analysis of those categorical variables, you can use the Simstat for further analysis. So QDA minor is supported by WordStat, which conducts the content analysis, and Simstat, which actually helps you in the statistical analysis. Anyway, let us just take a look into QDA minor. What I will do is I will give you a very brief idea about how the QDA minor functions in terms of coding. Okay, so how the codes are, because by this time you have understood how the data can be coded with the help of Atlas TI. So the functions are almost same. The way Atlas TI has functioned, the QDA minor will function in an absolutely similar way. So let us just open this, then you will understand. So this is the QDA minor. Let me just open you. Then I will just, after showing how the codification is done, then I will just go back to one of my you can say, pre-done project, demo project rather, and I will show you the other analysis also. So once you open this QDA minor, the first thing that you will be prompted is to create a new project. These are the options. Do you want to create a new project? open an existing project, reopen a recently opened project. Okay, so creating a new project, open an exist. If you have an existing project, you can open it or reopen a recently opened project. Okay, so to start with, I want to create a new project. Now, the moment you click on to the I want to create a new project, it will tell you that create a project from a list of document and images. So if I click it, it will allow me to identify which are the documents that I require, for this purpose. Okay, so if I am requiring certain documents, it will help me to uh, it will just help me to identify all those documents. Okay, so I will use these documents, but let me just give you the other options also. So import from data files or web services, this is also one of the features. So you can actually import from MS Excel. You can import as a CSV format, the comma separated value, or tab separated value. You can import from SPSS or Stata. You can import from different survey platforms, because these days we are using a lot of virtual survey platform because the physical survey field work is restricted. And we are using Survey Monkey, then we are using Qualtrics, we are using Survey Gizmo, the Voxco. These are very popular, online survey platforms. So data can be imported from there also, survey data. Social media, you can import directly from Twitter. But yesterday also I told you about flowing in data from the Twitter. See, those researchers who are very much interested about social media analysis data from the social media, particularly if you want to extract something from the Twitter, you must have your own Twitter handle, and all the softwares will access the tweeters through your Twitter handle. So you need to authenticate the software platforms so that they can access the tweeters through your handle. So that is the minimum requirement to do the research work on the basis based on the data extracted from Twitter. So we can have Twitter data, you can have Facebook data, data from Reddit, any kind of RSS feed. That means if you are interested about any blog sites, like say for example, I am very much interested about the travel blogs. So from the bloggers, you can actually have the data. You can extract or import data from the YouTube also. So this is a very robust kind of data importer. Then qualitative software. This is one of the most interesting thing of QDA Miner. See, it is compatible with almost all the data formats. Okay, so data formats which are stored under NVivo, data formats which are stored under Atlas TI or Ethnograph or Transana. Transana is another qualitative data analysis platform, or Ethnograph or Hyper Research. So it gives us a very nice, convertibility of data format, and it makes it compatible with QDA Miner. Then we have reference manager, so we can actually import our data from EndNote or Mendeley or Zotero. But these reference manager data is accessed when you are conducting your literature review, because all your literature inputs are stored in Mendeley or Zotero or EndNote, like that. Or you can go from the news or even email. Okay, because nowadays we are also using Google Forms. Okay, Google Forms to do a lot of survey work. So if you are having your Google Forms attached with your Gmail account, so directly from your Gmail account, you can extract all the survey data through your Google Form in this particular data analysis software. Fine. So what I would like to do is I would like to create a blank project for a design structure. Okay. So if I want to create a blank project from a design structure, I have to name all the variables, etc., etc. So I can have two options. One is create a project from a list of document or images, or create a blank project. So let me take up the first one. Create a project from the list of documents. So I have 11 FGDs over here, and these are the real data. Okay. So what I can do, I can select all these one after another, and I can simply give a command add. Okay. And then I will go for create. So I do not want the import file location. I do not want import creation at date time. For the time being, if there are any images, I have clicked remove images. Otherwise, it will take a lot of time. Okay. And I need to give a name. Say I am giving demo underscore AKDG stored in the desktop. Fine. So you can see that this data import is in progress. So all the 11 FGDs or focus group, they are brought over here. Okay, fine. So and as you can see, the interface is almost similar to that of Atlas TI. Okay, so it resembles in this left hand side panel, where all the reflections of whatever you will be doing here will be reflected here. Okay. And this particular part, this upper hand part, it almost looks like an MS Word document top. Okay, the ribbon that MS Word document has, it has almost all the properties, almost resemble to that MS Word document. And then we have these tabs on the top area, like project, then cases, variables, codes, grid, document, retrieve. And we will be much more focused on this, analyze. Okay. Now, one interesting thing is, whatever data you are bringing in QDA minor, they are stored as cases. Okay, over here. So we have 11 cases. Cases does not mean case studies. Okay, even if you are bringing case studies, they will be registered as cases. So how many cases we are having? We are having over here 11 cases. So 11 FGDs are there. Okay. And we did not initially mention any variables, so we have kept it as a document as a whole. So all the documents are considered to be one single continuous data set. Otherwise, what you can do over here, you can add variables over here. So it depends really on you, whether you can whether you want to add variable right at this point of time. Since I do not have that much of a time, so I am just simply going for coding, how to code this. Okay. Now since these are real data, these can be coded with exactly the idea with which these data were collected. So these focus groups were interviews were done by one of the scholars, so who is known to me, and he was very interesting to find out that how a particular government scheme which focused on supporting the tribal people in building up their own homes. Okay, so there is a government scheme which supported the tribal people to build up their own homes. So this particular research took place in Midnapur district, and let us just randomly do certain code. So what you can do is this is the code box you can see. Okay, so what you can do is two ways to assert the code, so to assign the code. One, you can prepare a code book first. Okay, then you can identify the segment and drop the code. And the second is you just do the same thing that was done in Atlas TI. Like you can select a part, this becomes the quotation or the code, and then this is the icon with the help of which you can create the code. Now interestingly, QDA minor, it offers another advantage over Atlas TI, that QDA minor, whenever you are coding, it also gives you the opportunity to identify the category under which the code will be restricted or code will be preserved. Okay, so what you can do is, say for example, I am just right clicking in this particular box. Where I am right clicking in the box where these codes are supposed to be, I am right clicking on this box and I am giving this command add code. So a window will open up which will allow me to put a code name, which will allow me to put a category name, which will allow me to color the code. This is the color code, which will allow me to write a description about the code, which will allow me to place certain keywords with the help of which the software will extract that exact codes from the data. Now this description and keywords are not mandatory, they are optional. Okay, so this is one of the ways I can create the code. The second way is simply go to the top. This is the code tab. You click the code tab and add. The same window will come up. Okay, this is the second way. And the third way is, let us do it simultaneously with identification of the segment or the quotation. So I have identified a particular segment. Then I have gone here. You see this green kind of instrument with a plus symbol. If I click this, it will open the same window. So it hardly matters in which way you want to do the thing. Let me do it in both way. So first of all, let me just right click here, add code, and let us give a code name. Say over here, I can give a code name, say social security. Under the category, say financial inclusion. Okay, so let me have this color only, the red color. So let me add. Okay, now you have seen in this code box, a category has been added, the financial inclusion. That is a categorical variable. You can see the symbol of categorical variable over here. Probably you are acquainted with this symbol. Those who are doing or using SPSS, probably you know. This is the symbol of a categorical variable. So we have a category over here and you have a code. Okay, now what we can do is, suppose this is the area of the data which speaks about social security. So what you can do is you simply drag and drop here. Now you see this area has already been identified with this particular code. Okay, so it is as simple as that. Now if I want to say attach something with this, say I want to attach some memo or some comment with this, so what you can do is you take your cursor over this particular code and then you right click it. Now if you right click it, you will find a lot of options. Remove the coding, comment, you can hyperlink with some other codes. Okay, so I will be using this comment. It opens up almost like a sticky pad and I can put my own comment over here. Social what says, what are the measures of, say, social security? So that is the question. You simply click this and now you can see a very small yellow box is appended on this particular red line which demarcates the quotation length. So if I take my cursor over this small box, you will find that this is the comment that I have added. What are the measures of social security? So you can add your own comments as you go on coding. Fine. So I have coded something over here, and let me code another one. say add code. Let me have another code, say for example access to credit, and I want the same category. Okay, access to credit, it comes under financial inclusion, and I am adding it. Now you can see that I have two codes under the same category. Financial inclusion, it's access to credit, and social security. So what I can do is say, for example, this is again very randomly chosen. So say this particular sentence, it speaks about access to credit. So if I again drag this, you will find that there is a overlapping, almost like an embedded code. So this part is basically is talking about, if I click this, you will find this part is talking about access to credit. Okay, now let us develop a code on from here. So codes add, say for example, uh, association with SHG, association with self-help group, and let me put a new category for this. Say the category is social linkages. Okay, and I can change the color code for a new category. Say I'm using blue color, and I'm adding it. And you can see a new category has been created, social linkages, under which association with SIG is there. So if I go to another FGD, another data, and suppose I randomly select this, and suppose I allocate the code over here, so it becomes association with SIG. So probably I can code like this, or I can use the third mode of coding. What was that? Say if I select this part, I go here at the top, okay, and I select this. But before that, you have to be absolutely sure that whether if you want to use the same code which is enlisted over here, it will also be shown up over here. So if I am clicking this particular part will also be coded with association with SIG. Or if I am using, say, social security, and then I am clicking this green icon, this will be a repetition of function. So I'm selecting something which already exists, and then I'm selecting this green icon. You will find that this social security, that will be coded. This part will be coded by social security. But I want a new code. Okay, so if I just draw a segment, then I use this green instrument with a plus sign, then I have something new. Say, for example, I am writing livelihood. Okay, and say under the category, say economy. So I'm creating another category, and I'm just using another color code. Say this time it is green, and it is okay. So you can see, and that is the third category that I have created, economy. And under economy, I have created a code which is livelihood, and then I have created a quotation, and at the same time I have created a code. So these are the three different ways with the help of which the codes can be created. So you take your own time to code all the data as per your concept and perception about all those codes, which are the keywords, which are the phrases which are very important. Now, say for example, if I want to actually virtually create certain group. Okay, in Atlas TI also I have seen that we can create the code group. So the code groups are very important because the themes or the patterns are developed from creation of these code groups. So what you can do is, say, financial inclusion, you have selected, this is the category, and you go to these codes on the upper ribbon, you select here, and you scroll down, you will find one particular option which is called virtual grouping. You just click it, and you will find that the icon, these have changed. Now these codes have a symbol of key, and this category, it has a symbol of a lock. Okay, so a virtual grouping has been created. Similarly, if I want to create another group, say again, I go over here and virtual grouping, and I have created another group of codes, which is with social linkages category and association with the SIG. So this virtual grouping of the codes, and once you go for the analysis part, you will find what are the implications of this group, because the moment you are grouping, the frequency distribution, the count distribution, that means the manifested level content analysis parameters or measures, it will immediately change. Now what you can do, you can remove these virtual grouping also, and it will regain its original form. So you can remove this, it will regain your regain the original form. So the basic activity of qualitative data analysis is how judiciously and how painstakingly and how minutely you can code the document. Now once you have coded everything, the entire document, you are in a position to go for the what to say you can go for the analysis part. So hopefully you have understood how to code. So we can code, let me just repeat once more. We can code as a preset code. So we can set the code first, the code name and the code category. We can add it, we can create a code, and then we can select a segment and we can drag this particular code. This is one option. The second option is I can select the quotation or the segment, and then I can go up here and I can create a code. So both the options are available to you. Either you can create your code book first, and then you identify the segment and just drag and drop the codes. That will be fine. Or as you read through the data, you identify the segments and do the code at the same time. So whichever suits you, you can do that. Okay, so that's the fundamentals of assigning codes to this. Okay, now let me just open mm, a file which has been coded already for the purpose of analysis. So I also have this is also a demo file. Here it is. Now once you are storing your file, you will find this kind of a blue icon which is stored. So this is demo underscore akdg. So this is basically the blue icon that has been stored. This is the project that I have created just now. So I have another demo project over here. So let me just open it. See, the moment you will be opening a demo project, you will be prompted to use either of the three things. Do you want to open it with a QDA miner, or with a WordStat, or with a Simstat? Okay, so the best thing, you open it with a QDA miner, because you can always go to WordStat and Simstat from the QDA miner platform itself. Okay, unless and until if you have the complete codification being done, then you can go for WordStat for content analysis. But if you want to codify and analyze at the same time, it's better you open it with the QDA miner. So let me open it with the QDA miner. Okay, so over here you will find that there are probably 20 odd cases are there. So these are all papers. So since it is a demonstration, so I consider these things as qualitative data inputs. So all these cases are there. I haven't, segregate it into any variable for the simplicity. Otherwise, you can easily segregate it into variables against which the code will have its origin, and then the search or the context of the search will be within the variables. So I will search the codes within the document itself. The document means all these 20, 21 cases. Okay, so when I'm clicking document, actually all these 20 to 21 cases, or whatever number of cases or whatever number of data inputs are here, everything comes into the picture. Okay, now I have created certain codes over here. 4 categories I have created. One is branding, and under branding I have 3 specific codes: heritage branding, ethnocultural branding, and branded content. And then I have social media communication. This is one category under which we have sharing the content. This is one code. Social connectivity, this is the second code. And user generated content, this is the third code. I have another category which is called impact. I want to measure the visitor impact, that is one code. Then the digital footprint. The digital footprint is a measure that how many times I am accessing the social network platform or e-commerce platform. So tracking the social media involvement. Okay, so how much a particular respondent is involved in accessing the social media. So these are the 4 categories, and these are 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8 codes. So this is a very miniature kind of an exercise. Fine. Now, the first thing that we are interested in, so over here you will find this particular tab at the top, which is called Analyze. If I click this, it will give us a whole lot of options. So if I click this, it will give you the initial thing, the coding frequency. Okay, so you can have a table of also this is the manifested level, or you can say the surface level kind of a calculation, the code and the code frequency, etc., the count of the codes, etc. So the first thing is the coding frequency. Then one of the most important thing that comes over here is the coding co-occurrences. Remember the Atlas TI, we have done coding co-occurrences basically for the relational analysis, and the coding documentation co-occurrences for the comparison. So over here, it will provide us with certain additional visualization. And this will allow us to identify some of the clustering clustering formats. Okay, clustering means particularly the way the dendrograms are being created. Okay, so let us just click the coding co-occurrence. So let me just start from the beginning. So we have 20 to 21 cases, that means qualitative data input. We have already coded them. We have 4 categories and we have 8 codes. And now we want to analyze this. Okay, so the first thing we did is to check the coding frequency, and we just simply we are searching within the document. Okay, the entire document means all the 21 cases, whatever we are having over here. And this is the search button. So if we are clicking, so it's a couple of seconds, and we have this entire frequency in the table format also you can have, and you can actually save this format over here. Save segment to disk, so it will be saved as an Excel file. So for your reports, for your journal papers, etc., if you require the table reproduction, you can have it from here. Okay, the next analysis, again you click on analysis, we go to the next analysis process, which is coding co-occurrence. Now the moment I click on this coding co-occurrence, I am getting this particular window. Now, what am I having in this window? I am having this is the option window. So where am I supposed to search? I am supposed to search in the document. The document consists of all the data. Okay, codes, you can be very selective, but I have by default all the codes will be selected. So let me consider all the codes. So I have 8 codes, so all the codes have been selected. Now occurrence, obviously within the document. Now over here you have a number of options. Okay, you can go for Jaccard's coefficient, you can go for Sorensen's coefficient, you can go for cosine theta. uh, it depends on what exactly you want to have. Like for example, Jaccard's coefficient, the calculation is like this. If I numerically or mathematically represent, it is A divided by A plus B plus C, where A is the cases where both the codes occur simultaneously, and B and C are the cases where one code occurs and not the other. Okay, and equal weight is given to the matches and the non-matches. So these are all the technical terminologies. So in case of cosine theta also, it basically a vector distribution ranging from -1 to +1. Anyway, by default, this Jaccard's coefficient of occurrence will take place, so we are sticking with that. Then this is the tolerance level. Lesser is the tolerance level. By default, it is assigned at a very lower rate or lower parameter. The lower the value is, the accurate the result will be. So maximum number of iteration is 500, and we are not changing basically the by default whatever it is selected. So we are going for a classical scale, because if you are going for a randomized location, then you have to generate the seed and then you have to provide the history. So let me restrict myself within the classical scaling only. So these are the options which I have set to run the code co-occurrence process. Okay, now the first thing is the dendrogram. Okay, so let me just click it. Fine. So probably this is this should be a very familiar uh, picture to you, because the cluster analysis, whoever have done cluster analysis, dendrogram is very popular, very popular to them. So if I identify a two cluster solution, basically what this cluster analysis actually denotes, or the dendrogram denotes, it uses the average linkage hierarchical clustering method to create the cluster from the similarity matrix or the proximity matrix. Now, codes that appear together, they tend to cluster at the very beginning. The codes that appear very frequently together, they tend to appear at the very beginning, and the codes that appear at a very later stage or doesn't appear together in the agglomeration schedule, they tend to merge, or they tend to cluster at the very end of that agglomeration schedule. Okay, now it signifies, what does it signify? So as a researcher, when you will be writing your research report, what does this particular thing signify? It signifies the temporal order of branching sequence. Okay, it's the temporal order only. So with this temporal order, we are not supposed to find any accuracy check on this clustering schedule. So clusters have been identified on the basis of the similarity index, or if you can use agglomeration order also if you want to identify the cluster. So two distinct clusters were identified. You see, tracking the social media involvement and user generated content, this is one cluster, and branded content and ethnocultural branding, heritage branding, sharing of the content, social connectivity, visitor impact, this has been in one particular cluster. And there is a color codification of the clusters also. Now over here, as I have told you, it is basically this dendrogram or cluster analysis, it signifies only a temporal order of the branching sequence. Okay, now I want to be absolutely assured, as a you can say, qualitative researchers, or as a qualitative data analyst, that whether the quality of my clusters are perfect. Okay, what is I because right from here I cannot comment about the quality of the cluster, unfortunately. Okay, but I can actually save my output, so I can I can save it as a JPG image, say for example, uh, Dendrogram 1, say for example, and I can save it over in this folder. Okay, so it can be used in my research paper, etc. Now the thing that I was referring to, that after conducting this cluster analysis, I need to be absolutely sure about the quality of the cluster. So can I have any coefficient which is having a thumb rule that beyond a certain value, the quality can be assured that yes, the clusters are robust enough to be accepted as a cluster. Okay, so yes, I have another feature over here. You come to this particular tab, as you can see over here. This is called a Shilute analysis, Silhouette, a Shilute analysis, which was proposed by Rousseau in 1987. This particular process of Shilute analysis was proposed by Rousseau in 1987. Basically, the objective of Rousseau was to identify or to check the quality of the cluster so that the clusters can be accepted and can be produced in the reporting. Okay, now this uses a graphical tool to actually identify the relationship between all items to other items in the same cluster, and a global statistical coefficient, or you can say GS, it is basically said GSC1, that is used for coefficient purpose. Okay, so that brings about the cluster solution. So Shilute plot of a cluster solution is constructed by composing for each element, and that becomes very important. So let us just click for this Shilute analysis, and you can see that average Shilute coefficient is 0.349. The rule of the thumb and the reference is any figure which is greater than 0.250 is considered to be a good quality of clustering. Okay, so if you see the cluster 1, the Shilute coefficient is 0.481. Ethnocultural branding in the cluster 1, so the cluster 1 is having a higher average of Shilute coefficient. Cluster 2 is having a relatively low average of Shilute coefficient, although the overall score for cluster 1 is 0.349, and for the overall score for cluster 2 is 0.214. As a result of which, we can say that although two clusters have been identified, the second cluster quality wise is a little poor compared to the first cluster. First cluster is way above it's a level of standard, which is 0.250. Anyway, we can consider both the clusters and we can proceed with that. So that is basically the clustering. Then we can generate a 3D map. This is also very interactive. So I can change the position of the 3D map to visualize it in a perfect way. So you can visualize what are the relationship or the interconnectivity between the clusters. Then I can proceed for the link analysis. Okay, this is the network analysis which was taken up in Atlas TI also. Now this can be done by using this filter sign. Okay, you can see this filter sign is appearing over here. So if you click, then you can determine actually amongst whom you want to have this network. So say for example, I want to have the network between all these components. Okay, then I just go for apply, and then you can see these are the components. Fine. Now the thicker the line, the greater is the relationship score. So what you can do is, if I want to eliminate the very weak relationship or very weak correlationship, what I can do is I can drag this cursor and go on reducing the very weak relationship, and I will be getting a very filtered kind of relationship. Okay, so over here you can see that sharing of the content with social connectivity, sharing of content with heritage branding, sharing of content with branded content, ethnocultural branding. So whatever being shared as a content on the social media, using the social connectivity, it helps in build up it is having the chance to build up the heritage branding, branded content, and ethnocultural branding. This is as per the responses of the interviews or the data that I have collected. So I can develop a link analysis. Then I can generate the proximity analysis. This is the proximity plot. Now there are you can see these are the codes that I have used: the heritage branding, ethnocultural branding, social connectivity, sharing context, etc., etc. Now, if ethnocultural branding, if I am using two of this, can I have a dual plotting kind of a thing, so that the comparison becomes much more effective. So if I just click this ethnocultural branding and add it to the target item, then what happens now? It is a combination of branded content with ethnocultural branding, and then the comparison is between branded content and ethnocultural branding in relation to heritage branding. Okay, so this is the proximity area. Social connectivity, this is the proximity. Sharing of the content almost equally divided between branded content and ethnocultural branding. But here lies a very important issue with regard to visitor impact. You see, the impact mainly comes from the branded content. The impact does not count from the ethnocultural branding, because this place is remain vacant. So when it comes to the response, the interpretation of this proximity plot is, as far as the visitor impact is concerned, the respondent feel that the branded content has to play a big role in visitor impact. However, ethnocultural branding is yet to have an impact on the visitors or the tourists. So this is a proximity plot. Again, you can save this particular plot. So for every output, you will be having an option to save. Okay, so this is one particular analysis. Then you can go for coding sequence analysis. This is another. You can go for coding by variables, which will give you a much more insight into the data and analysis. You can go for now over here you can see the content analysis is here. The content analysis, if I click OK, it will just redirect me to WordStat. Okay, so this is the content analysis initial window. This is the text processing part. You can check the frequencies. It will be automatically calculated. No, not to worry about that. The word cloud will be framed automatically, etc. Then we have an extraction process. If I run the extraction process, the basic themes will be extracted. That is very interesting. Okay, so these are the basic themes. You see the perceived usefulness, then destination image, all the, since these are the PDF journal papers, probably you will not get the exact idea of a qualitative data document. But if you have the qualitative data items, you can identify the themes or the topics from here. And then you have the coherence ratio over here between the topic and the keywords. So it gives you a very nice kind of data visualization. Over here also you can have the dendrogram between different words. Now it is much more robust. Okay, all the words and the clustering of the terminologies. Okay, now if I want to reduce the cluster, say I do not want 100 clusters, I only want say 20 clusters, so it can be reduced. Okay, and the major words will be grouped under clusters. Okay, and then the cross tabulation, you can take it onto the statistical platform also. You can do that. Keyword in context, since I didn't finalize any keywords, so it gives you a vacant result. Okay. So I think we can stop here, because otherwise it will be a bit overloaded. And if I get a time in future, we can actually go for a much more detailed elaboration of QDA minor. But the basic objective is you can those researchers who are very much interested in using qualitative data analysis, they can use these kind of data analysis platform to make their analysis much more robust and much more visible. You can support your analysis with a lot of visualization that brings clarity, that brings a logical sense to whatever you are interpreting. But always remember this thing, because I am telling this thing from yesterday onwards, that while engaging yourself into the qualitative data analysis, the researcher's own thought process, the researcher's own perception, concept, mindset, input, etc., that is the main thing. How the researcher is perceiving the data, what researcher can find inside the data, how researcher can actually correlate the data with other data, how researcher can find out or can dig out the inherent or the hidden meaning, and the rest, the visualization and the networks and the mapping and the co-occurrence and the tabular formation, aggregation, congregation, concentration, counting, frequency development, etc., can be done by this particular software. Okay, so Dayada, can we stop over here?
Thank you, sir.
Because if this session is to continue, then lots of other things will come around. I don't